We had record-breaking tornadoes last week in South Florida, specifically here on the Treasure Coast, and it's caused a lot of questions around what the impact on prices in the communities most heavily hit will be. Stick with me, and I'll tell you about a conversation I just had.
You better get fired up.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm a pretty positive guy. If you guys watch me at all, if you know me at all, I'm pretty positive. I'm excited. I'm motivated. I'm cheery. But the conversation that I recently had with a client was a pretty glum conversation. It wasn't an easy one. It wasn't a fun one. This was a couple who wants to move back to Indiana. They thought when moving down here, they'd have a bunch of family moving with them. The family did not move with them. They've been here for maybe 3, 4 years. And they said, man, we really miss our family. We love it down here, but we miss our family. Let's sell and go back and be with family, which is completely understandable. So we've been talking for about a year on what it is they need to do to prepare. What do they need to clean? What do they need to replace? What should they add? Whatever. We were looking at the return on investment on all these different projects, and they were doing a phenomenal job of moving forward with all this stuff. We last met maybe 6, 8 weeks ago, and they had gotten pretty much 95% of it done. There's just a couple things that you want to be fresh, like landscaping is a good one. You want it to be fresh at the very end. So they were waiting until about a week or two before we took photos to get that done. And they live in Portofino Shores up in Fort Pierce. Their community was heavily hit by the tornadoes. And, to my knowledge, I'm sure there's others, but to my knowledge, the two most heavily impacted communities were Portofino Shores and Spanish Lakes. So the question that this gentleman asked when he called me like 2, 3 days after the tornadoes was, Joe, we've been hit pretty hard here in Portofino Shores. I was blessed enough to not be hit. My home is in great shape. I'm so happy. But what kind of impact will that have on our home values when we're going to sell here in a month or two, knowing that as a buyer, drives through our community, they're seeing maybe 40% of the homes have visible damage. And some of them have roofs that are gone. The clubhouse, according to this gentleman, was damaged beyond use, right? And is that going to be something that takes 30 days or a year or, who knows? So what kind of impact is this going to have on values? And what should his expectation be on his planning? So I said, listen, I'll be honest. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've never had a situation like this where, a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake or anything like that came through an area, ravaged it, and say 40% of the community was visibly damaged. I don't know what kind of impact that is going to have, but the closest thing I can think of is Tesoro. And Tesoro did not have a Mother Nature experience, but what it had was within management, they had this beautiful HOA, maybe the most beautiful HOA in Port St. Lucie. They had a couple golf courses, restaurants, beautiful clubhouse. And one day they just shut it all down. They shut it all down and none of it was in use. And this was for a long time. I don't know if it was 2 years, 3 years, what it was, but it was a good amount of time. And I remember when I first showed a home in Tesoro, and I did not know the story. I was looking at this home thinking, man, this has got to be $1.5 million, $2 million, and it was 675. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Why is it 675? And I mentioned to a friend of mine that this was so cheap, and also it was a pretty how do I say this? These homes were not 12 to 24 months old. There were 5, 6, 7-year-old homes in there, but they were very scattered. Like there'd be a home and then 8 vacant lots, and then a home and then 3 vacant lots, and then a home and then 12 vacant lots. I was like, man, this is really weird. So I figured out the story, and because they had basically just left all the amenities and you couldn't have access to any of them, it was a huge turnoff. Not just because you didn't have the amenities, but you were still paying the fees. And because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what else are they going to take? What else is going to negatively happen here? I don't know. So these homes were being sold for considerably less. I would guess 30, 40, 50% less. Now, they have had people come back in, get the restaurants going, get the golf courses going, get the clubhouse going, and the property looks beautiful again. And I'm seeing prices go right back up to where they should be, which is phenomenal. But it's been years. So I said, if I'm to look at that, potentially it could be years. But the challenge there is the leadership did not want to make the thing that was needed, the amenities, happen. And so it wasn't happening. It's really going to depend on outside resources, i.e., FEMA, insurance. How quickly are they going to pay out, and how quickly are homeowners going to get these things fixed? And when it comes to the clubhouse, it's going to depend on the board. Are they going to send out assessments to people who are already maybe financially burdened? Are they going to wait for 6 to 12 months before they do anything about it? Is insurance going to cover it? Is FEMA going to cover it? Without all those things known, it's really hard to tell you what the timeline looks like. But the shorter the timeline of things being repaired, obviously the lesser impact it's going to have on your value. So I advise going to that next board meeting and just seeing what the board said. Do they plan on putting resources towards it? How much? How are they going to do it? Is it a clear board full of leaders? Or is it folks who are, because I'll tell you, I'm a board member. Board members are not professional board members. I'm not a professional board member, and I'm on the board. I'm the daggone president. And I can tell you that there are things that pop up all the time where we're like, I don't know. I don't know. We got to call the attorney all the time to say, hey, can we do this? Should we do this? Do we have to do this? Because we want to make sure that we're following the letter of the law. I don't know what kind of leaders they got up there. I just don't know the board. So it's going to depend on them. So I would go to that meeting, get a feel for that, and you should have a good idea what that's going to look like. If they've got a 3 to 6 month plan, I would probably wait 3 to 6 months until that's done. If they don't really have a plan, well, that's a bigger concern. So what I said, and the discussion I had with him was, my understanding of your situation is you want to move, you don't need to move, right? It's the family that's kind of driving this. And you're almost assuredly going to take a hit short term. Is it going to be 20%, 30%, 10%? I don't know. I have no idea. But whatever that hit is, whether it's 10 or 50, is it worth it to get back to your family? No. Okay. Then, and for most people it wouldn't be. That's just too much money. If that's the case, then I would wait maybe 90 days. Reach back out to me. I'll look at all the sales in not only Portofino Shores, but in Spanish Lakes. And we'll see in a community that has visible damage, a lot of visible damage, what percentage in decrease in price have we seen? And I can give you 2 different communities and tell you what we're seeing. And now with those numbers, if they're all over the place, then your confidence should be low in knowing what you're getting into. If they're all within a couple percentage points lower than they would have been, well, then you know it's going to be roughly this amount. And because they're all so close, I can feel confident in that. I said, but we really won't know for about 90 days. And even in 90 days, we might have 0 sales, 1 sale, 2 sales. So it might still be challenging. And I could tell through that conversation that money was more important than getting back home. So I said, let's just wait until we're confident. Let's wait until you go to a board meeting and we see kind of what's going to go on with that. Let's maybe wait 2-3 months and see how insurance payments are going. And are people actually hiring roofers and window guys and everything else to come out and fix these things? Then let's make the decision there. So if you are a seller in one of those communities, I would give you exactly the same advice. And I'm happy, whether you're using me as your realtor or not, to do a market analysis for you in 90 days. Take a look at some of those sales and tell you kind of how much impact prices have had. If you're thinking about buying, you are in a very gray area. Sure, you can come in 30, 40, 50% low. The amount of sellers who are going to accept that, not a lot, maybe 0. You're saying, well, all these homes are impacted. You've got to come in low. How would you not understand that seller? A seller saying, there's no way in hell I'm going to take this. You're taking advantage of me. This property was just worth X 30 days ago. It's certainly not worth X times 50% now. So it's not that you're right. It's not that you're wrong. I'll tell you, in 2008, prices were plummeting. And sellers just were not realistic. And that's the big reason why homes weren't selling. There were plenty of buyers. I remember I was showing homes. But they were coming in considerably low. Sellers were not going to come in that low. And they would just sit. There were not a lot of sales. And the ones that were selling were the sellers who were willing to drop significantly for that particular buyer. So if you're a buyer, I will say this. You can put in offers all day long. But the odds of you getting 40, 50% low are pretty slim. You would have to see a year go by, a year and a half, 2 years of, hey, they're not building this community back up. It's going to look like a train wreck. And I don't think that's going to happen in either one of these communities. But if it were, that's when you can start to get sellers to say, I'm seeing the light. And it sucks, but I see it. But they're not going to see it in a month, 2 months, 3 months. Like they do not care. And for the most part, hardly anybody has to sell in 1, 2, 3 months. So if you're a buyer and you think you're going to get that deep discount, you're almost assuredly not. If you're a buyer and you had already planned on buying in Portofino Shores or Spanish Lakes, what is your concern? Portofino Shores is very similar to a lot of other communities. I'm not saying it's not unique. It doesn't have as amazing parts. And maybe your mom lives there, so that's why you want to live there. But you can find suitable alternatives to Portofino Shores within 10, 15, 20 miles. Price point wise, you're in an HOA. It's maintained the way that Portofino Shores is maintained. You can absolutely do that. If you're a buyer looking in Spanish Lakes, there are not a lot of communities with home prices that low. Now, your monthly is going to be high because you've got monthly rent in most of those lots. But if you don't care about the monthly, what you care about is the cash out of pocket, the price. That's hard to substitute for. And there I would be a little bit more cautious on moving forward. But again, it comes down to, what is your motivation? If your motivation is, I'm 55 and I'm going to sell this when I'm 65 and I'm moving to Jamaica, then I would be strongly cautious. If you're saying I'm 81 years old and I'm going to die in this house and this is all I can afford, well, then who cares? You're going to die anyway in that house. I'm going to die in this house. I hope. I love this house. I love my mortgage rate. I love the community. I love everything about this. Something would drastically need to change for me to move from here. So for me, when I overpaid $25,000 on this house, I did not care at all, because over the span of my entire life, it's just not that big of a deal. But if you're looking at moving in 5, 10 years, it's a bigger deal. So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's, what is your particular situation? What's your motivation? How long do you plan on living there? Is this more of a domicile decision? Domicile decision? I got to get my verbiage right. Or is this more of an investment decision? If it's more of an investment decision, I move with caution. If it's more of a, hey, this is where I'm going to homestead and live forever, then it's less of a decision. Now, you still got to take into consideration, do I want to live in an area that's got a significant amount of damage and I don't know how long it's going to take? And maybe I've got FEMA coming in and out of here, insurance agents coming in and out of here. I don't know if I would want that. But it doesn't matter what Joe Rosen wants. It matters what you want. So again, take all those things into consideration when you're looking at one of these communities. If you're looking to sell, again, reach out to me. I am a data-driven guy, and I will absolutely give you data and help you make these decisions based on data rather than my opinions. I'm happy to help anybody. I do not care if you have a realtor and you don't use me. I don't care. I want to make sure you're making great decisions and they're educated decisions. Guys, if you've got any ideas for future videos, I'm here every single Monday at 11 o'clock. We'd love to hear what's hot in this market. And if those ideas come from you, even better. Guys, have a great day. Thanks for joining me.